can turn that in. Okay, so we are going to be writing some expressions today and also like writing sentences from expressions. Okay, so number 1 says 12 cookies divided among n people. So if I want to write this as an expression, first thing I'm given is the 12. Now, if I want to write divided by, how do I write divided? What does that look like in an expression? So, straight line, 2 dots like that. Okay, that is correct. We also can do it in one more way. Ezra. Oh, like long division? Oh, okay. Yes, that is true. This one we're not doing long division though. Division, we could also see it as a fraction. Do we all know that fractions is the same thing as dividing? Like if I say 6 divided by 2, that's like a fraction. So when we're thinking of division in these problems, we want to write them as a fraction. So if it's 12 divided by n, we're going to do 12, fraction bar, and then our n. Number 2 says 8 more than n dollars. What does more than mean? Not greater than. What does more than mean? So if we want to write 8 more than, we would write addition. So that would be 8 plus n. All right, number 3 says n notebooks decreased by 2. What does decreased by mean? Yeah, like if I'm trying to write this as a math expression, I write n decreased by, what would that look like? I got a subtraction, so that'd be minus 2. All right, and then P slices of pizza shared equally by 4 friends. So I have a certain amount of pizza slices, and we're trying to give it out equally among 4 people. What does that sound like? All right, so again, if we have P slices of pizza and we're trying to give them out equally among 4, do we think that would be multiplying, adding, subtracting, or dividing? Yeah, it'd be dividing. So you're trying to like divvy it out and divide it between your 4 friends. So that's going to be P divided by 4. All right, and then number 5, it says 3 packs of N ponytail holders. So if we have some amount of ponytails in our packs and we have 3 of them, what do we think that's going to be? That'd be multiplication. So sometimes we see a multiplication like this. We see it like 3, like with the dot, or we see it like 3 times with like the X. What's another way we can see it? There's one more way. Like if I just write them right next to each other. Yeah, so if we write something right next to each other, that also means multiplying. So a few different ways we can write that one. Okay, so a mathematical statement that contains 2 expressions and an equal sign is called an equation. So this is the blank on your paper, equation. So the last few ones that we just wrote, those were expressions. So we're going to practice writing equations. So they had equal signs. Okay. So whenever we're writing these, we're going to write from left to right. Like I just kind of go through the sentence and write down as we read. So the first one says 20 minus. So if I see 20, I'm going to write a 20. What does minus mean? Subtracting. So we're going to write a subtraction. So 20 minus. The quotient of 7 and x. What does the word quotient mean? I heard it. Yeah, it means division. So quotient means dividing. And whenever we have like the quotient of two things, we always write whatever comes first in the top. So it says the quotient of 7, so we write 7 in the top, and x, so we divide by x. So we got 20 minus the quotient of 7 and x. What does is look like when we're writing it? Is equals, yeah. Thanks, Emma. So equals, if you see the word is, we're saying like that is something, so it's equal to that. All right, is the same, so it is the same. That means equals to. As twice x. If I want twice something, x, what does that look like? Means you multiply by 2. So we would write 2x because it's twice x. We don't feel like. All right, so part B says 4 times the number. So how would I write 4 times the number? The number is what we don't know. 4x. Be 4x. So 4x, 4 times some number that we don't know. Less 10, how would less 10 look like? Subtract 10, yep, minus 10. Is equal to, so what does that look like? Equal sign 16. Okay, so your EOC loves word problems, so we're going to do lots of word problems in this class to get ready for that. So this one, do I have a volunteer to read? I can't go back. So they asked 799 teens about what they do on social media. If they're 430 said they're mostly kind, 193 said they are not mostly kind, and then they want us to find the number of teens surveyed who are not on social media. So the first step, so we're going to write an equation and figure it out. So our first step is to identify like what's unknown. So like what are we trying to figure out? So what are we trying to figure out in this problem? How many are not on social networks? So we could use any variable you want. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to just use x. So we're going to say x is equal to the number of teens who are not on a social network. So that's our unknown. That's what we're trying to figure out in this problem. Step, we want to figure out like what do we know? So we want to identify like what did they give us that we already know that's not an unknown. So there's a few different things they give us. What's one thing they give us that we already know? Yeah, so the amount of teens surveyed, which was 799. So we know that 799 teens were surveyed. All right, what's another thing that we know that they give us? So they say another thing is that 430 are mostly kind. All right, and then the last thing would be that 193 that we know are not mostly kind. So we want to write an equation for this situation. So we want to think of what do I know, what do I not know, how can I set it up? So we can, from the 430 and the 193, we can figure out how many total are on social media. So we could just add those two together and figure out how many are on social media. So we could do 430 plus 193, right? Because those are the ones that are mostly kind and not mostly kind. I think that's like 623. So we know that 623 are on a social network. So then for our equation, there's like a few different ways we could set this up. But we could think about our 623 that is on social media plus the ones that aren't on social media, which is X, right? We don't know how many there are. And that's equal to what? That would be equal to the 799, like the total amount of people that they surveyed. So the 623 is from all of the kids that are on social media, plus X, those are the ones that are not on social media, which we don't know. And that's equal to the total amount of people that were surveyed, which is the 799. And we're not solving yet or anything. They just want us to write the equation, so we're just going to leave our answer like that. All right, so we're going to do another word problem. This one's multiple choice, though. So it says, Edu has read 12 of the 32 chapters in his assigned book. He plans to finish the book by reading C chapters each day for 8 days until the book is due. Which equation represents the situation? So we're going to go through again. They give us the variable this time. They want us to use C. So we've already read 12. So that's the first thing they give us. So we've read 12. So I know we need 12. And then each day we're going to read a few more. So if we're trying to finish the book, do we need to add those chapters to the 12 or subtract those chapters to the 12? Well, I heard two things. So we would add the chapters because we want to add them and reach the 32. So which two answer choices could we eliminate? Yeah, the ones we were subtracting, so A and D. So now if we're looking at the other ones, one of them is doing C divided by 8, and one of them is doing 8 times C. So if we're reading some amount of chapters for 8 days, we're trying to get to 32. If you're not sure, you could try to think about it logically. So like if I were to read 2 chapters per day for 8 days, how many chapters would that be? If I read 2 chapters every day for 8 days, how many chapters did I read? 2 per day for 8 days. That would be 16. So you do 2 times 8. So which one do we think it is? C. Yeah, we want to multiply. So we don't want to divide because we want to grow. We want to get more. So we want to add the 8C, and that will be equal to the 32 total chapters in the book. Okay. Okay, so sometimes we'll have equations with like multiple variables, and usually these show up as formulas. So we're gonna still write the equation, but we're gonna have 3 different variables in this one. So it says the perimeter of a rectangle is twice the sum of the length and the width. So there's 3 things that we don't know in this. What's one thing that we don't know? The what? So it says the perimeter of a rectangle is twice the sum of the length and the width. Did they give us an amount for the perimeter? No, so we don't know what the perimeter is. And I'm going to say perimeter is P. So I'm going to just use, when we're doing formulas, it's helpful to just use the first letter of the word. All right, what else do we not know? There's two other things. The length and the width. Good. They don't tell us how long the length is. They don't tell us how long the width is. So I'm going to use L for length. And I'm going to use W for width. So we kind of already did part 2 as well because we assigned the variables. We gave all those variables to them. So step 3 says identify the givens and the relationships. So they only give us one thing. They say that the perimeter is twice the sum. So we know that we're going to be using twice the sum somewhere in our equation. So twice we've mentioned shows up as like 2 times something, and sum is addition. So we know that it's going to be twice the sum. That's what we know is going to need to go into our equation. Okay, so it says the perimeter, so we're going to write our equation. So it says the perimeter of a rectangle is, so I know I need to start with the perimeter, which we said was P. What does is mean? Equals. Twice. Twice means 2 times something, so we're going to need a 2. So it's twice the sum of the length and the width. So we need to add the length and the width together because sum means addition, and then multiply that by 2. So in this case, we need some parentheses because we need to add the length and the width together first. Add the length and the width, and then we need to multiply that by 2. Okay. All right, so we have another formula one. So formula, we usually have multiple unknown things. So this one says the horsepower of a motor is the product of the motor speed and the torque divided by 5,252. So this one also has 3 things that we don't know. What's one unknown thing in this one? The motor speed, okay. And like I said, when we're doing these formulas, it's easy to just use the variable that is the first letter of the word. So I'm going to use M for motor speed. I don't know what the motor speed is. All right, what else do I not know? The horsepower. Again, use a variable that represents it. I'm going to use H because it starts with an H. And then lastly, what do we also not know? We got motor speed, we got horsepower. Well, it's motor speed. The last thing is we don't know the torque. So the torque, and I'm going to use T for that. All right, so writing our equation, horsepower of a motor, so the horsepower of the motor, so we're first starting with H, because we're just going to write as we read along, is, what is? Equals. All right, next part is the product of the motor speed and the torque. So what does product mean? Multiplication. So we're multiplying the motor speed and the torque. Product of means multiply. So multiply motor speed and torque. So we're doing M times T. And we're just going to sit them right next to each other because that's multiplication. We can just write them right next to each other. And then we are divided by 5,252. So we divide, like the fraction, 5,252. Okay. Next one. So this one's talking about bagels. So it says plain and cinnamon raisin bagels are the most popular flavors each year. The number of packages of plain bagels that are sold is 24 million, more than twice the number of packages of cinnamon raisin bagels that are sold. There are 136 million packages of plain bagels sold last year. We want to create an equation that can be used to find the number of millions of packages in cinnamon raisin bagels sold last year. So lots of words. We want to write an equation. They give us the variable. What's our variable in this one? What's the variable? It's C. So we want to write our equation centered around our variable C. So our first thing says each year the number of packages of plain bagels that are sold is 24 million more than. And we're going to say like this is just in millions. So we're going to say 24. How do I write more than? It's addition, yeah. So 24 plus twice the number. What does twice mean? 2 times. So 2 times the number of packages of cinnamon raisin bagels. And that's our unknown. So 2 times C. We don't know how many cinnamon raisin bagels were sold. And that is, they're saying that is equal to the 136 million packages of plain bagels. So that's going to be equal to the 136. Okay, so now we're going to look at it and then write the sentence. We're going to go backwards. So with this, there's we've seen different ways to represent different things. So there's a few different ways we can write some of these. So for the first one, I have a 2 sitting right next to a Z. What is that? So it's 2 times the Z. So like I said, there's different ways you can write this. So you could write 2 times Z. What's another way we can write multiplication? As words. So we could write 2 times Z. We could write what else? Twice. We've seen twice. There's another way. Kamari? Oh, my bathroom. So we do twice times Z, 2 times Z. We could do 2 multiplied by Z. You could do the product of 2 and Z. So lots of different ways. So I'm just going to write 2. And whenever we're writing these, we want to write out the numbers. So don't write 2, write the word 2. And then we're doing 2 times Z. All right, our next part, we have our -1. So we could write -1. How else can we write that? What's another way to write -1? Decrease, yeah, you could write decreased by 1. Another way? Yep. So you could write -1, decreased by 1, less than 1, subtracted by 1. So all of those work. So I'm going to write minus, and we're going to spell out your numbers. So -1. All right. What are some ways to write equal to? Equal sign. Is. Other ways? So you could say is 5. You could say is equal to 5. You could straight up just say equals 5. So different ways to say that. I'm going to say is equal to 5. All right, I want you to try the next one. So write your sentence. There will be multiple different ways you can do it, different answers. All right, someone tell me their sentence they wrote. Caden, you want to go?
6 times Z minus 15 is equal to 45.
right, so Caden, so 6 times z minus 15 is equal to 45. Did anyone write anything different for any part of that? Nobody? No one wrote subtracted, multiplied, is, but there are different ways. So you could have wrote like 6 multiplied by c subtracted by 15 equals 45. Okay. So this one is 3y plus 1 equals 12. So the parentheses, when we have parentheses and a number in front, so the parentheses tell us that 3 is doing what to the parentheses? Yeah, so you multiplied. So our 3 is being multiplied by whatever's in the parentheses. Multiplied. Should be writing. So whenever we're trying to write an expression that has parentheses and write it as a sentence, we're going to write it as multiplied by. So that's how it's going to show up when we write it in a sentence. So whenever you see parentheses, think multiply by. Okay, so we're going to write this one out. So the first thing is a 3, so we're going to write out 3. Then when you have the parentheses, you're going to write multiply by. So 3 multiply by. How would I write the next part, this part right here? What's in the parentheses? Yeah. You could do y plus 1. You could do the sum of y and 1. Either one of those works. I'm going to say multiply by the sum of y and 1. Or you could do y plus 1. Okay, and then how do I write equal sign? Equal to. Or you could write is. And then 12. So you could write is, you could write equal to, you could write equals. A few different things for that one. Okay, so we are going to skip down to this problem, which is the bottom left. This will be the last one that we do. So this is, look at this bottom left corner of your paper. So this one they give us, it says the formula for a loan balance is blah, blah, blah. If the previous balance is P, the annual interest rate is R, and the payment of D is made. Does everyone know what a loan is? So this is like the formula. So they want us to like match the sentence to the equation. So let's just go through our answer choices and see which one works. So part A, so number A says or letter A, sorry, the balance. So the balance equals. So in our equation, they say B is the balance, and then we have an equal sign, so we're good so far. It says the previous balance multiplied by. So they say previous balance is P, so we have P. What do parentheses mean? We just said it on the multiplied, so we have that. It says the quantity of 1 plus, I have a 1, I have a plus. The annual interest rate they tell me was R, so I do have R, divided by 12. Is that R being divided by 12? Yes. And then minus the payment, and they say the payment is D. Do I have a minus D on the end? So minus the payment, so that would be minus D. So it looks like A would be good. Let's check the other ones real quick and see if that's right. So part B says the balance equals the previous balance multiplied by the annual interest rate divided by 12. So in the second one, looks like we're missing something about a 1 plus. So that one would not be good. C says the balance equals the previous balance multiplied by the sum and the annual interest rate minus the payment. What am I missing in part C? What do we not see in that one? Do we see a 12 in that one? No. So that one, could it be C because we're missing the divided by 12. And then the last one, the balance equals the previous balance minus the payment. What am I missing in that one? Yeah, we're missing 12. We're missing the plus 1. Missing a few different things. We're missing the multiply by. So I think A would be good for us.